Well, how do Hollywood stars keep their dirty laundry out of the press? Excuse me. In the age of... Sorry, yes, Kylie, you can...
In the age of social media, I was coming to your aid. In the age of social media, it's getting harder to bury secrets, but back in the 50s and 60s, hiring a fixer to cover your tracks was commonplace. Enter Fred Otash, the former cop who became one of Tinseltown's most influential players. He's the LA private eye who inspired characters played by Jack Nicholson in Chinatown and Russell Crowe in LA Confidential.
How's it going to look in your report?
It'll look like justice. That's what the man got. Justice. Why don't you go after criminals for a change instead of cops?
Fred Otash was Hollywood's go-to fixer during its golden age, bugging homes, wiretapping politicians and doing whatever it took to protect his celebrity clients.
Fly me to the moon, let me play up there with those stars. Let me see what life is like on Jupiter and Mars.
Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland and Marilyn Monroe were just some of the icons who turned to Fred in their hour of need. Book is revealing details from the detective's never-before-seen investigative files. Isn't it? For more, we welcome Manfred Westphal, co-author of The Fixer, Moguls, Mobsters, Movie Stars and Marilyn. Welcome, Manfred.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Telling Fred's story has been a 30-year project for you. You met him back in 1990. Why was his story so important to you?
Well, you know, when I met Fred so many years ago, I couldn't help but feel as if I had stumbled upon the holy grail of Hollywood stories. He was a fascinating, larger-than-life man whose singular life intimately intertwined with some of the greatest icons of the 20th century. So needless to say, I've been obsessed with telling his true story in one way, shape, or form ever since the day we met.
Manfred, let's get through...
Unfortunately... I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Unfortunately, I was going to say that Fred's real-life persona has been rather hijacked and maligned in recent years by certain authors. So it was very important that when Josh and I sat down to write this book, that we tell Fred's authentic truth, juxtaposed to all the fake news that sadly has been part of the cultural zeitgeist. And that goal would have never been possible if not for Fred's daughter, Colleen, who so graciously provided us with exclusive access to his treasure trove of personal files, which included his investigative files and archives, as well as 14 hours, approximately 14 hours of personal recordings that he made leading up to his untimely and mysterious death in 1992.
Let's go through some of his most iconic cases. Fred lied to federal authorities to protect Frank Sinatra from going to jail.
Yes, that's a very intricate case that actually takes up 2 chapters in our book. In 1957, Frank Sinatra was facing perjury charges for his involvement. Well, actually, he was being investigated by the California Senate committee into tabloid magazines, which culminated with the trial of Confidential magazine, the most scandalous scandal rag in the history of all tabloid journalism. Fred was hired by, I don't want to ruin it for readers, but Fred was hired by Sinatra's attorney to prove his innocence, even though he knew that Sinatra was guilty. And he was able to do that, but at the same time, he helped Sinatra avoid a grand jury indictment that would have possibly landed him in jail.
Well, tell us about how and why Fred moved in with Judy Garland.
Well, that's one of my favorite stories in the book. Judy hired Fred to be her live-in bodyguard when she filed for divorce from her third husband, Sid Luft. Not the sort of gig that Fred was used to, but it was Judy Garland, and she was paying him the equivalent of $6,000 a day. So, but unfortunately, when her acute addiction to alcohol and prescription drugs became evident, Fred took it upon himself to lock all the booze away in the garage and, much to her chagrin, flush all her many pills down the toilet, effectively forcing Judy to face her demons cold turkey, which she did. And he stayed with her by her side for 30 days through the worst of her withdrawals. And when it was all over, Judy was clean and sober, and his work helped reconcile her marriage to Sid Luft, which was the longest of her life, that lasted 13 years.
He was Fred the friend and fixer. He also uncovered the Kennedy brothers' affairs with Marilyn Monroe, and he actually heard Marilyn Monroe's final moments.
Yes, his initial... well, you know, Fred's relationship with Marilyn Monroe is obviously the most sensational and revelatory that we found in the files. They met when they were practically kids, really. She was a young ingenue named Norma Jean, and he was a young, strapping rookie police officer. Their relationship over the years would be a very nuanced, complicated, and somewhat tumultuous friendship that spanned the course of their respective Hollywood journeys until the day she died, which haunted Fred for the rest of his life. His initial surveillance of Marilyn began during the run-up to the 1960 Nixon-Kennedy presidential election, when he had been approached by very powerful Republican operatives working on behalf of the Nixon campaign to bug Peter Lawford's Santa Monica Beach House, which by then had become the de facto West Coast headquarters of Jack Kennedy's campaign. The Republicans wanted, it was Watergate, it was political espionage. They wanted intel on what the Democratic political party was planning. And that all changed, however, when Fred inadvertently recorded Marilyn having sex with Jack Kennedy. Then everything changed, and they wanted him to pivot and develop a derogatory profile on Jack Kennedy, with Monroe being the main target because she was the most famous. They wanted proof that Jack Kennedy had serious moral failings because back in the day, in 1960, having an adulterous affair, especially with the world's greatest screen siren, was enough to knock him out of the race. Later, after President Kennedy was elected president, Fred was approached by Teamster leader Jimmy Hoffa to bug Marilyn's home.
Yeah.
He wanted evidence of her affairs with the Kennedys so that he could use it as a bargaining chip to keep him out of jail. And it was this acute surveillance of her home that provided Fred with firsthand knowledge of what's transpired during her final hours.
Manfred, these are
which
amazing.
Included,
Sorry, it'll come as no surprise to you. We are right out of time, but these are incredible stories, and we could listen to them all day. We're just going to grab the book instead. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
My pleasure.
Awesome.
It was great to be with you.
Awesome, epic stories in there. The Fixer, Moguls, Mobsters, Movie Stars and Marilyn by Manfred Westphal and Josh Young. That is out today. Some great stories in there.